Thank you very much for joining us today, guys. Really good to see you. Today, of course, we're joined by some wonderful guests who are going to help us talk through enhancing your rental software and how we can support that with those invoice processing and the automation around that. So today I'm joined by two guests. So Nikki from DocTech. I'm sure Nikki will do her own introduction in a few seconds, but lovely to see you, Nikki. And Amar, of course, from Wernick Group. So Amar, again, wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us today. So guys, just a little recap. On the right hand side of your screen, you should see the go to webinar bar. If you do have any questions, you'll see a little pane in there, just as the picture on your screen now. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in there. We will be giving some time at the end to answer any questions that have come in. So no such thing as a silly question. So feel free to fire those over throughout the session today. So during today's session, what are we going to cover? Well, today we're going to go through, Nicky, if you could just pop that slide over for me. There we go. Why we automate our invoice processing, what's the point of doing that, and what's the benefit that you get from going through those automation processes. Secondly, Nikki's going to provide us with a demonstration, which I know she's been putting together for us, and I'm really excited to see. So hopefully everyone else is as well. And then, as promised, we are going to come back to some of those Q&A options where we give you the opportunity to fire in your questions. So enough of my brummy twang for today. I'll hand over to Nikki. So enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Andy, much appreciated. So yeah, my name's Nikki. I'm from DocTech. We've been implementing DocuWare for 29 years. I've hundreds of installations around the UK and Europe. And we have a specialism in the rental industry with a particular focus on businesses using the RM software from MCS. And that's really what we're going to kind of focus on today. Amar, who's on the call today, is one of my customers. So we have implemented DocuWare with the integration to RM together, and he's going to be able to answer the questions at the end, as we've just discussed. So why would you automate your invoice processing? Many finance teams are being held back by cumbersome, manual, paper-based processes. Invoices arrive by email, and they're either printed off or manually emailed around the business for approval, causing delays and bottlenecks. Finance teams who should be spending time on analysis and reporting to improve the performance of the business are actually spending time manually entering data into their rental software and chasing people around the business for answers. As modern finance teams look to technology to boost their productivity, it's no longer acceptable to rely on folders, paper, emails, and shouting across the office to try and achieve your goals. Saying, well, that's the way we've always done it, isn't going to protect your business from risk or give you a platform to grow. By implementing DocuWare alongside your existing rental software, you can automate the manual steps, leading to quicker, more accurate processing. As you'll see shortly in the demo, DocuWare's data capture can extract the relevant data from your incoming invoices, drastically reducing the need for manual data entry. Once we've captured the data, we can then check that against the information in RM, automating checks that are currently being completed manually. Have the goods been received? Do the prices match the purchase order? Is it even a valid supplier? All these things that you're currently manually checking, we can do automatically. If the date is in RM, we can see it. If exceptions are found, or you want any other approval steps, we can allocate tasks to the relevant people based on your own business rules. So you don't have to shoehorn yourselves into DocuWare. We can configure it to work exactly how you want it to work for your business. Once an invoice is approved, we can then send that data over into your rental software and then generate those transactions. So as I said earlier, where people are sat and then manually entering all that information, we can pull it off a document and then export that information directly over without the need for any manual data entry. As your documents have been through DocuWare, you now have a central place for all your finance documents with dynamic search features and a clear audit trail behind every document. Once you've finished with the invoice, you can quickly reference it in the future, but we don't keep it indefinitely. We can use DocuWare to apply retention rules to make sure that you're also GDPR compliant at the same time. So really what we're looking to do is streamline processes to make it as efficient as possible. So why automate your invoice processing? To save time, no more manual checks or data entry. To reduce risks by digitizing and automating the process so there's no risk of losing a document or them going missing. Automation means no more data entries or rushed, inaccurate decisions. You know, it's not 4 o'clock on a Friday and everybody really wants to get everything out, and all of a sudden people start making mistakes. Overall efficiency is also improved, not only through the automated processing, but in everyday tasks that have now become quicker and easier. You can see any document you need in seconds and see where it's up to in the process to give accurate answers quickly. You also get those stress-free audits, which we all want, because documents can now be found in seconds, and you will have a complete audit trail behind every document that's been processed. Okay, so shall we see what that looks like? Let's jump now over to the demo part. Okay, so if we're moving over to the demo, the first thing I'm actually going to show you is RM. So those of you who use the RM software from MCS might be familiar with this interface already. What I'm going to show in today's demo is we've got a couple of orders here just sat waiting for us in RM. Someone has generated these orders. They have then ordered the goods, and the goods have been received and they've been receipted in RM. That's then when DocuWare comes in. We're going to get the invoice in, and what we're going to see is it move through the process, and I will come back to these screens here to show that we've been able to automatically allocate those particular products. Okay, so we'll keep an eye on these two orders here. But this is DocuWare. This is what we're interested in really for today's demo. So just to explain what we're looking at here a little bit, we've got a document viewer over here. So this is where we'll see documents arrive and as they move their way through the process. And then this workspace will change based on different things we do. What I'll end up doing is touching on these different tabs up at the top here as we work our way through the process. Now, one thing that's really great about DocuWare is the user-friendly terminology. Okay, when I get documents in, they arrive in my tray, just like they would on your desk. A new document arrives and it comes in your tray. When I've done with it, I put it in my cabinet, or when it's moved to the next part of the process, I put it in my cabinet, just like you put it in a cabinet in your office. If I want to then do something with it and say I'm happy with it, I put a stamp on it. So you can get a document into your tray, store it to your cabinet, and add a stamp to say you're happy, exactly like you would in a paper environment. So when it comes to handing over DocuWare to your users, it's really understandable what we're trying to do as we move our way through the workflow when we do that. So I've got a couple of invoices waiting for me here, but let's just take one step back from there and say, how do documents arrive? How do we get documents into DocuWare in the first place? So I could click import. I could just pull something in from a folder. Maybe something has come in paper. We could connect to a scanner. We can monitor folders. But as you'll all be aware, the majority of your invoices will come in by email. So I've just got this little demo folder set up here in my email. And you can see already we've got this little DocuWare button up on our ribbon. DocuWare has a direct integration with Outlook. So it means that any invoices, other finance documents that arrive by email can automatically be captured. Really simply, if something comes in, choose the email and I click the button, it can store the attachment, the body of the email, any combination of the two. If this had multiple attachments, I could just right click and then you can see store that away to DocuWare as well. But we can also add other things. You know, we can route incoming documents to particular folders. Maybe you want us to process purchase order invoices, overhead invoices, other documents. We can route those to the relevant folders in your mailbox and then pull them out of that particular area and start processing and categorizing them at that point as well. We can even monitor an entire mailbox. So it really just depends on your own particular requirement. We'll work with you to understand how do these documents arrive and how can we most seamlessly get them into DocuWare. One of the really useful features of using this integration is this little blue DocuWare category. So it's a really simple little feature. Every time I use any of these storage methods for using DocuWare's integration, it will add this little blue category to it. What that means is if I've been off for a week and I've come back in and we've got a shared mailbox, invoices app, accounts app, something like that, I can really easily look in there and I can already see what's been actioned and what's been stored away because it's got this blue category. So if ever you've got a situation where you have to leave things marked as unread or you move them to different folders so people know what's been processed, you don't need to do any of that manually anymore. When something's stored away to DocuWare, it will then add this category, making it really simple and easy to see what's been stored from email. So just a really useful feature for finance teams when documents are arriving. So let's just come back over to my tray. Now, if we come here, I can see I've got two invoices waiting, the invoices that relate to these particular orders, obviously. And you can see they've got a little green bar next to them here. So when a document arrives in DocuWare's tray, DocuWare has a feature called intelligent indexing. What DocuWare does, it looks at those documents and says, have I seen this before? Do I know the data you need me to capture? And then it'll extract that from the documents automatically. And the data is presented like a traffic light system. You can see here where it's gone green. So where a document goes green, DocuWare's found everything we need from the invoice. Where it's amber, it's got most of it, but it might need you to confirm one or two things. And if it's gone red, It's a document DocuWare doesn't recognize, and we need to teach it where to find that information for future. And it's really simple to do that. So what we can do is, if I select these documents now, I then need to store them away to my cabinet, as we just talked about. So my documents have arrived in my tray. We've pulled out the relevant data. I then click store, and it brings me here to this storage screen to store them away. Obviously, as I'm working through my demo, I'm doing this very kind of methodically and step by step for you to understand each stage, but your finance team will be kind of rattling through these really quickly as documents arrive in. So when we go to store these away, you can see the data has been captured from the document. We can either look at the document itself. So if I click on here, I can see here it's highlights in yellow where it's found that particular piece of information for me. But what we can also do is populate information that isn't on the document. For example, the supplier code. You know, here we want to store this away. We know that when we send that data over into an external system, it needs the supplier code. What we can do is look that up in external databases and add to this data based on what's either on the document or the other information that you need. Earlier, I mentioned the traffic light system with DocuWare's data capture. You can see here all the fields have been captured that we needed, but let's bear in mind, let's say some of this had come in and it had missed some of the information. So let's say we were missing our document number and our purchase order number. Maybe someone scribbled over the top of it and we've not been able to capture it properly on the data capture. If you need to populate any information, all you need to do is come over to the document and you just select the field on the document and it will then populate that field. And you can see here how it's gone purple. That's how DocuWare learns. Okay, what it will do is it will start learning where to find that particular piece of information on a document. It now knows to look to that location in future, as opposed to a system that requires a template to be built for every supplier. There's a level of intelligence around the capture. DocuWare applies a series of logic. Is it in the place that you've told me it is? Is it next to the other words that you told me it would be nearby to? Is it near the invoice date? Does it have a date format? You know, all these kind of logic it applies. And it applies that series. And even if that information has moved on the page or moved to a subsequent page, it can still apply that series of logic. So you've got much more intelligence around that capture than a kind of templated system that you might be looking at. So we can see DocuWare's captured all the information we need. All we need to do is click store, and that will then move it along in the process. Again, you can see here, you know, let's say we've picked up an additional character here. I can just click on the document and it will fill in my relevant information. You can also see here as we can fill in all the data in the table as well. So we can also pick up all the line items, which is really relevant for our matching to RM, right? We're looking at specifically down to the line item level here. So we can click store and that will then store that document away for me. Okay, so our invoices have come in. We've pulled out the relevant data. We've now stored them away to DocuWare. What DocuWare can start doing now is start applying rules. Okay, it can look at that particular index data and say, okay, what do I know based on this information I'm looking at? What rules can I apply? What you'll notice here is I've got a little one up here on my tasks. What that tells me is it's found something in one of those particular documents that it wants me to address. But something else to really be mindful of is the fact that I started with 2 documents and now I've only got 1 showing in my tasks. So where has that other document gone? If I come here to my lists allows me to show documents in a particular status, okay? And what I've got is a little list here that shows documents that we've stored today. And I can see the one we just saw, we're going to come back to in a minute because we've got an exception. But I've got this one here, which we stored away. And I can see from the status, this has fully matched and exported to RM. So this invoice arrived. We did the data capture. We've looked to RM and said, yep, this matches the order and it matches all the lines that have been receipted. So I'm going to send it over automatically for you there. So if we come here, we've got our order number, our one that's 12. Let's come here. If I just refresh this screen, what we can then see is in RM, those lines are now fully allocated. I didn't have to do any of that manually, right? There's no magic that I've done there that you haven't seen. We've just built a tool in the background that when DocuWare sees a document, it checks it against the data in RM, and then we update RM automatically as we do that process. Now, I know a lot of people in finance, it scares them a bit, that level of kind of touchless interaction, you know, not actually seeing it as it moves through. Just be mindful, we could always put a step in here where we said it fully matches, we're happy that it's done it, you just give me the nod to fully allocate it. If you want a level of oversight, if you find then all you're ever doing is saying yes, we can take that step out and then it will seamlessly move through the process like that as well. So that's your best case scenario, right? That's really what we would love to see from all our invoices. Unfortunately, not every invoice you receive is going to be a complete match to your orders in RM. And DocuWare's workflow can help you manage those exceptions without the need to print anything off or email things around or just to chase manually for approvals. So with this other one I've got that's sat waiting in my tasks here, let's look at these and think about some of the other things that DocuWare could manage for you. The first thing that's happened here is when I've stored this away is we've got a duplicate check. It's told me you've already stored this. You know, I want to flag that up, bring that to your attention. And what I can then do is, you can see this little related documents button here. This is saying, well, can you show me that invoice that's a duplicate? What I can do is click on here. It's going to show me that invoice. And what I can actually see is the stamp on the document. And we'll come back to these stamps later. But I can see straight away that actually they sent this future dated. And I'm not going to process it if they've sent me a future dated invoice. So someone in my team has already rejected this and informed the supplier that that's the case. So what I can then do is quickly see that it's a duplicate. I can understand why I've received a duplicate. And now I can say, okay, fine, this is a fine date for us to process. And I can then move myself along in the process. So we can look at those documents and make sure information is correct. Does the net and the VAT equal the gross? You know, do your line totals add up? Things like that. We can check all of that before we start sending information over into RM as well. Now with this particular one, I've done my duplicate check. And if we think about the allocations process in RM, obviously, as I said, not always are you going to receive everything directly one-to-one for your order against your invoice. What we can do in this particular one is that DocuWare has identified that the total on this invoice is less than the available total on the PO. So potentially we're missing some information or some of the information is incorrect. What we can then do is pull that information down from RM and present it to you in DocuWare. So it said, these are the lines I've found on the order that I think are the lines that relate to your invoice. And what I can then do is quickly say, right, yeah, I've got the correct quantities and the correct amounts that are on here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure these are the lines that I want to allocate against my order in RM. If for any reason we wanted to adjust the quantities and things like that, we could say, actually, I'm only being invoiced for 5. I want to change this number. And again, that can send that information over into RM. So what you're not having to do is go backwards and forwards between systems. You can just be working in DocuWare and it will be sending the information backwards and forwards to you automatically. So in this particular instance, I'll say, yeah, I'm happy with that those lines have been allocated. And you can see now my tasks have all dropped off. But if we think about workflow and approval, it's great that it matches to PO and that we want to then say, yes, I'm happy for that to be paid. But sometimes businesses want to apply other rules to how they process their documents. So if I log out now as my user, I will log back in as someone, those of you who use MCS may know, there's a chap called Nick Thompson. So let's see what approvals he's got to do. If I come out of my user, I'll log now in as Nick. What we can do is apply things like value-based approvals. So yes, it matches the PO, but actually, if it's over a certain amount, maybe I want to send that to somebody else for approval. So I'm all great that you've matched a PO that's £1 million, but maybe we want a little bit of oversight. Maybe we want somebody else to check it. All we've done is built into our workflow here that any invoice that exceeds £500 needs to go to that person's line manager for a second approval. So although we can do those touch points with RM, we can also add separate layers into the workflow. And when it comes to workflow, you know, these can have as many branching paths as you want. It can go to a single person, a group of people. When one of them approves it, that's fine. Or maybe you need all of them approve it to say it's fine. Whatever your rules are, whatever your levels of control you have, we can put those in place in DocuWare for you as well. Something as well, just to show you here as well, we've presented in with the allocation lines, but they are uneditable. We know finance teams don't like people messing with their information once they've confirmed it's correct. So what we can do is present information to other people, but in a format that means they can't edit it in any way from that point. And I'll use this opportunity to talk about stamps. Okay, you've seen a few of these as we've moved through the demo today. Every time you take an action in a workflow, DocuWare is going to add one of these stamps to the document. When I do it down here, it's going to find an empty white space and just put a stamp on for me. What a stamp allows you to do is show who did what and when. Okay, so you can clearly see when you look at a document who's done what and where you're up to. So you don't have to shout across the office. You don't have to do some detective work to try and work out what's happened. Everything's really simple. People aren't picking up the phone to finance every 5 minutes asking where things are up to. They can look at the documents themselves and see where they're up to. What's also good about stamps is they sit as a layer on top of the document. So you always have the original document underneath. So you're maintaining that integrity of the document. What that then means, if someone in the business says, you know, where are we up to with that invoice? You could choose to share that. You could send it to them by email with those annotations so they can see then where things are up to. Or maybe someone says, I need a copy of the original invoice. Send it without the annotations. And then you don't see those stamps. And when we talk about annotations, you know, you can always come in here as well and add a note to your document as well. You could, if I could spell properly, let's add a note on there. You can draw boxes, add lines, again, which all allow you to put little comments onto your documents while maintaining the original underneath. It's a really useful way to keep all your messaging and all your information in one place as well. Okay, so Nick's seen this now. He said, yeah, I'm happy with that. I've seen these arrive. I know that I'm happy for us to pay this. And he would then click confirm and we would move along with our process. So I'll just come back out and move over to me. Again, so we've seen our documents arrive. We've captured the data off those invoices. We've matched that information over with RM, and then we've made decisions based on the information we've seen at that point. If I now come back over to my RM, we'll see in here, if I come into my lists, we'll see both of my documents have now been exported to RM because we've had the full approval. If I come now over to this one and I refresh my window, what we'll be able to see based on us individually picking those lines is that we've allocated 3 lines, but we've got one that didn't appear on the invoice, which is still left as being receipted. Okay, so all that's being fed by DocuWare as you move your way through the process as well. Okay, so it's great for processing, end-to-end, seamless, very impressive. What if we want to find a document later? What if we want to just search for something ad hoc? A lot of you might be working with folder structures. Okay, so where you've got to remember, well, where did I put it and what did I call it? And did everybody in my organization put it in the right place and call it the right thing? Or is it a piece of paper in a folder somewhere and I've got to go down the hall, take the second left, out through the rain to the certain room where I've got to find the document that I need? When we're working with DocuWare, because we've stored everything away using all that index data, what that then means is we can search by any of that information. So of course I could put my invoice number as my document number and run a search for a particular document. But what I could also say is, I'm interested in seeing all the invoices from this one particular supplier that was over £1,000. And I can then run that search. It will search through my entire archive and present me with the particular documents where that criteria apply. And what that then means is you can add and remove those fields to really give you a dynamic way of searching for the documents you need if you want to look a bit more deeper into the kind of documents you're processing. That's great with the index data, but what DocuWare also does is when we store documents away, we also store the content of those documents as well. And that's where our full text search comes in. Let's say we're working on a new project. We really need to order some particular type of washers that we got previously. And who did we get it from? No one really remembers the supplier. If I use my full text search and I put the word washers in, it's going to present me with every document that contains that word. And if I click on that document, it will show where on the document that has appeared. So if you're working with reg numbers, part numbers, product numbers, really complex bits of information within your line item data, you can search on that using your full text search, and it will search through your archive and find the documents where it's included as well. Really quick and easy to find what you need. And that's really what we're trying to achieve with all these different search features, is to get you to the documents you want to make a decision as quickly as possible. But it doesn't just apply when you're working in DocuWare. So let's come back out here. Let's come here to, looking at our order here that's partially allocated. DocuWare has a feature called Highlight Search. And what that means is if you're working anywhere else on your PC, here I'm in RM, but I could be in my another finance package, or I could be in my email or anywhere else in a system we're working on. What I can do is highlight a particular reference. I'm going to use a little hotkey on my keyboard. What that will then do is it will open up a new window, run a search on that particular term, and bring me back all the results that it finds in DocuWare. She says as she tries to do it again to make sure I press the right key that time. There you go. So what that's now done twice, because I'm too keen, is opened up a new window, run that search, and it will then bring me those results back. So if you search on, say, an order number here, maybe I see the original purchase order. I can see that future dated invoice that we rejected, and I can see the most recent one, and all I can do is clicking it on, it will open up as a window, and I can now see that document, I can see the stamps, and I can make the decision on the thing that I wanted to reference or that I've been asked a question about. If it finds one document, it will just open up in a window like this on its own, and where it finds a list of documents, it will show itself like this in a little list here. So what that means is you don't have to come out of your rental software, go to DocuWare, log in, go to the search screen, enter the field and run a search. What you can do is stay where you are doing your work, use that little keyboard shortcut, and it will direct you to the documents that you wanted to see when you're working there as well. So the search feature's really beneficial in terms of getting you the information you want. So we've done processing and workflow. We've been finding documents that we're looking for as well. Last thing really I wanted to touch on was DocuWare's digital forms. So These processes are great when the document already exists, right? An invoice has come in, or you've received an order or something like that. But what we can also do with DocuWare is create digital forms for you to start processes as well. So if there's no document at the moment, you can use DocuWare's digital forms to do that. In this one I'm just opening up here is a new supplier form. So let's say, for example, in finance, you want to create a new supplier form or a credit application form, or you want to make sure that your contractors who are using high access equipment have given you the right certifications and the right insurance. What we can do is configure these digital forms with whatever content you need. So all it is a little web link. You send that out to your contractor, your supplier, whoever it would be. They then come in and fill the information in. Now, what really helps based on, the comparison to kind of a cumbersome Word PDF-based form, we can have mandatory fields. So no one's going to ever send you a half-completed form, because you can specify they can't submit it until those fields have been completed. We can include field masks, information that has to be in a certain format to make sure people don't add an extra digit that then leaves you chasing it around when you're trying to find that information later. We can have date fields. We can include signature boxes. We can include image uploads. So if you do want, when a supplier applies to work with you, you want to be able to then say you need these certain certificates, get them to upload a certificate. You can capture the expiry date of that certificate, and DocuWare can then remind you when they need to be renewed ahead of time. So loads of other things finance teams can be doing to manage those supplier relationships. Also, digital forms are dynamic. So based on what I respond, will open up additional sections of the form for me, as you can see there. So rather than having 6 different forms that you then have to send out to all the different people, you can have one form, and then depending on what they select, will then populate the pieces of information that are relevant to them. With a digital form, just like anything else, when you then submit that back, it will appear as a task. You can go through an approval process, exactly as you've seen me do with the invoices today. So do be mindful of things like digital forms as an addition to DocuWare as well, because it's a really useful tool that we're seeing people more and more. The last thing I wanted to touch on really was I talked earlier about audit trail and security. So if I just come back to my search and I want to look at documents that we've stored today, if I right click on any of these documents and I come to the history, I can see every single workflow step that has gone through today as part of me showing you this in the demo. You can see me making the selections to the documents at different times, and every time I kind of interact with the document, open it, edit it, all of that has been stored within our workflow. So if ever you find yourself in a position where you want to know what happened to a document, where was it up to, who did what and when, be that a person or the system, all of that information is there for you. So you've really got that peace of mind that you've got control over your documents at all times. Okay. So to summarize, you can see that after creating your orders in RM and receipting the goods, the invoices arrive by email. We use our email integration to pull the invoices into DocuWare. We then automatically capture the data from those invoices using intelligent indexing. And once stored, we automatically pull the data and capture that into the RM databases to route the documents around to the relevant people in the organization. What we can also do is find documents in seconds. We can quickly find those documents. And right at the start, I talked about reducing risk, and that's where those audit trails and workflow steps come in terms of the history. Okay, I hope you can see from the demonstration that DocuWare and its integration with those external systems can drastically improve the efficiency of your invoice processing, leaving your finance team free to spend time on more valuable tasks and to help boost performance throughout the organization. So that brings me to the end of the demo. In case you don't want to take my word for it, we can move over to the Q&A section from Amar. So if you do have any questions, do put those in the chat as well. We have done a case study with Amar as well. And what we can do is Nick's going to put a link in the chat to that case study. So if you do want to read that after the call, Nick is going to share that as well. So thank you very much. I will leave Amar to answer the grilling that you're about to give him. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Nikki. Amar, we have a few questions coming through. First one is, what were the main drivers for you to implement DocuWare alongside your RM software?
Thank you. Main driver was ultimately efficiency. As Nikki pointed out in the demo, there's a lot of manual tasks being completed by the department, which was ultimately taking up time for the department. So it wasn't necessarily about reducing staff within the department. It was about how we actually get them doing high value tasks and getting away from that layer of low value tasks which are taking up most of their time. So hope that answers the main driver for why we implemented DocuWare.
Super, thanks, Emma. And what improvements have you seen since actually implementing DocuWare?
Quite substantial, actually. Obviously, with any large implementation, it's very much about staged. So our biggest challenge was, we were processing at the time of looking at it about 15,000 invoices. So we've done it on a one-off POs where we're matching header and footer. We're now moving over to line-by-line allocation, which Nikki's obviously gone through and demoed, which has brought substantial improvements again to the department. So it's ultimately freed up their time, again, like I said in the first question, to focus on the more analysis, the more high value tasks, which actually help us as a business grow.
Great, thank you. And what has been your experience like working with DocTech so far?
Very knowledgeable, to be honest. It's not very often that you deal with companies and you can actually get resolution at first point of contact. So actually, that's been a major driver for it. Very knowledgeable about the products and actually understand what we want as well to get us the right resolution. Because yes, the platform's very broad, but every company is going to have their own processes, and so they've taken the time to understand how it works, how we want it to work for us, and then put the right resolutions in place.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, with things like this, it's that there are obviously teething issues and things like that. So I'm just wondering if you've had a good experience with the support team at DocTech. Has that gone so well so far?
Yeah, again, they very much handheld us through the implementation process. We went through quite a strict testing regime to understand and teach the platform. Like Nikki rightly says, it's very good because actually it's broad and doesn't pigeonhole us for having specific layouts. You're teaching the platform to use it. You have teething problems with it, and staff have to understanding how to use the platform because it's a change for them. But it was always easy to get hold of someone and come back with the right answer to resolve those teething issues.
Mm-hmm. And are there any plans to do more with DocTech and DocuWare?
Yeah, there is. So we are actually in the process, and something that some of the attendees might come across here with using a rental management platform is our rehire process, which is quite a challenge, and we're actually been scoping this for a number of months now already with DocTech and doing quite a lot of due diligence on how we can get that process right, because it is reliant on so many different components within the platform, which is something that we are working quite closely with DocTech at the moment on.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you could give just a brief overview of what's challenging about that rehire process?
It's because of how the process, the rehire process and the POs are processed within RM. It's effectively an open PO where we are toilet servicing, for instance. We don't do that in-house ourselves, but we have that on a regular cycle with a supplier. So they're sending through the monthly invoices. We need to make sure that it matches against the servicing that's been completed for that period that we've invoiced. And we've also got the relevant waste transfer notes against those invoices as well. So, it sounds quite simple, but when you actually then put it into the system and the matching against those, it then becomes a more convoluted process. And it's about how we get that right.
Yeah, there's a lot of part of that process. There's lots of, this company invoices every second Tuesday, 65% of the invoice, and then the third Wednesday they send the remainder. And trying to apply logic to what can be an illogical process is sometimes tricky.
Yeah, it is. The invoicing. Some are on a 2 weekly service, and it could be and then you put the additional. Sometimes customers will request an additional service. So how do you allocate that? So it's getting the logic right.
Thanks, Amar. And going to talking about staff and how they use DocuWare. Do the finance team like working with DocuWare? How's that going for you?
They've all taken to it. There's quite a mix of staff there. Staff that have been there for a number of years, newer staff, but they've all taken on board the positives that it's bringing to them, and actually how it's now enhancing their work life in terms of their work day more so, and freeing them up to carry out larger tasks, and make them more efficient effectively.
Okay, thanks, Amar. No further questions regarding that, but there is one which is directed at you, Nikki. I'm not sure if you showed you. I think you probably did in the demo, but Hamid has asked how he would like to know how the purchase order was linked with DocuWare.
So in this particular example, if we're looking at something like RM, we would look to the databases within RM to an external system to find that purchase order data. So typically, I would say in most modern installations the purchase order is created in another system, and then we look to that system, to the databases, to make decisions when the invoice arrives. We can also create purchase orders in DocuWare and have them approved in DocuWare and then look at that information there. Or we could store a PDF copy of your purchase order and capture the data and look at it in DocuWare. So really, it does depend on each individual instance. We just look at how are you working at the moment, what's the most streamlined way for us to achieve that, and then that's how we would typically advise to implement it. So, but I would say the majority of modern installations we're looking to external databases for that information.
Thanks, Nikki. No further questions, so you can wrap up if you like.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody attending today, and a special thank you really to Amar. Thank you for giving us some of your time to flesh it out. Not everybody believes a salesperson, right? So it's always nice to have someone who comes on and actually speaks from their own experiences. To those attendees, thank you for your time. If you have any follow-up information, you can see my contact details on the screen. You can find me on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn if you've got any messages, or again at DocTech, we post a lot of information about DocuWare and the services we provide. So do follow us on LinkedIn as well. We will be attending the Executive Hire Show with DocuWare next week. So myself and one of my colleagues will be on the stand with DocuWare. We're on stand J40. So do come and find us. It'd be great to meet anybody who's been on the webinar today, just to get your feedback on what you've seen and to follow up with any questions you have. So thank you so much for your time.